Over the last 25 years, I've had the privilege of interviewing and highlighting some truly interesting people. Everyone who is anyone, both the famous and the infamous, from presidents and their first ladies to kings and queens, movie stars and pop stars, captains of industry, heads of state, sports personalities, innovative entrepreneurs, and some pretty fascinating everyday people. Today, I'm proud to introduce you to Philip Yeager, co founder, chairman of the board, Century 21 Master South America, Century 21 Mexico, and Century 21 Brazil, establishing one of the best known real estate brands in the world. Mr. Yeager, I have to tell you, that is one impressive resume, but it all comes down to real estate. So let's start out by talking how you first became involved in real estate.
Well, I'm afraid that my mother first became involved because her parents were involved in real estate. And then my mother got into real estate during the World War II. And then my father, after coming back from overseas for 3 years, bought a real estate company in Covina, California. And I used to sit and listen to them as a teenager. And I decided at that point I never wanted to get into real estate. So I then went into the Air Force, graduated from Claremont Men's College in California, went into the Air Force and became a pilot. Actually, I had sold it when I was 16, so I knew exactly what I wanted to do when the Korean War broke loose. So I'm a third generation realtor. My son now is a fourth generation realtor, and he will quickly take over my position in the next 5 years. So I'll be out of it, but I've had a great career and I enjoyed every minute of it.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Yeager. It is extremely impressive. But I find it interesting. When did you decide to focus on the South American market? That's very specific.
We sold our two regions in the United States. We had 400 offices and 9,000 salespeople at that time. That was in 1997. And by selling that, that gave us the funds because we had already acquired Mexico. That it gave us the funds to acquire South America with 13 countries. And so I guess the answer is it was there.
Mm-hmm. And if you build it, they will come, sir.
Exactly.
So I want to get into how you rose through the ranks of the real estate industry because you chaired the board of directors and founded 3 specific regions. Let's start with, how did you rise through the ranks?
I was sitting in my office. I had an office in Covina, California, and I was sitting in my office one day, and 2 gentlemen walked in, which I didn't know, and said they would like to talk to me. And so I always talked to anyone because I could always learn. And they said, "Have you heard of Century 21?" I said, "No." They said, "Well, we're just getting started now in Southern California, and we're going to have 5 regions. And we want you to be the owner of one of those regions." Well, I was well-known star in the area. I had been a leader in adult education. I had been a teacher at local evening schools for adult education. I represented UCLA in courses, and I wrote courses, and I was involved in the California Real Estate Association, and I was on their education committee, and I was a featured speaker throughout California, and I was also a national speaker. So I was well known, and that's why they came to me. And so they said, "Well, we'd like to tell you about this new concept of Century 21. And I listened, and I thought, well, I thought it was pretty nice. I was listening because I knew one thing, that the chains in the Southern California real estate controlled everything. So they were wide open for leadership, and I knew that. Mm-hmm. And that's what franchising does for a company.
Mm-hmm. Sir, as I listen to you, I hear you saying, for all practical purposes, you helped build a brand. What's the mission? What's the the value structure of Century 21?
You see what I'm wearing?
Yes, sir.
Why would I wear it?
You tell me.
I was one of the people that decided to wear gold.
Ah,
I was one of the people that decided to do the colonial post, which was on a property in their front yard.
yes, indeed.
Never been done before, right? We wanted to be different, right? And we didn't want to be in the Secret Service. We wanted people to take one look at us and know who we were and respect us for what we did. And that's building your brand.
I was right that brand building was important to you. And as I was reading about your history, you had a keen sense on creating a niche within a market that existed, but making that niche your own.
It worked. It worked so well. In 3 years, we were across the United States with regions. In 5 years, we had regions in every state in the United States. In 10 to 15 years, we had 5,000 offices and controlled 10% of all the residential resale business in the United States.
Sir, I know that there are a number of people who are interested in the real estate market, who are interested in doing what you did. And I always laugh when I hear that question asked to an expert, because my answer is always, then you need to do what I did. But what makes you successful at what you do, in your opinion?
I gave some thought to that yesterday and last night, and I came up with a concept which I think works for me. I have 6,000 hours as a pilot. Most people work within their own sphere of influence. They work within the box. I work with outside the box. As a pilot, I had to know all about my aircraft, all about the people in the back seats. I had to know how I was going to get to my objective, how I had to have alternate fields to go to, right? The letdown procedures when I got there, the instrument flying on the way, right? So I had to keep my head out of the cockpit. And therefore, I had to think outside the box, what was going on outside the airplane. And I think that's a prerequisite for a business plan. Mm-hmm. So I automatically think in terms of a business plan in everything I do.
And speaking of that, sir, because of your varied experience, you were the founder, as I said, of 3 Century 21 regions. Tell me what those experiences were like.
Well, to begin with, in 1972, when there were 5 Southern California regions that opened up at the same time. Mm-hmm. When we opened, we didn't know what we were doing. So we had to make it up along the way because we didn't understand what a franchise was. We didn't understand how to develop a region. So, but we did it. And that became the business plan for all of the regions coming up. Identically the same 1, 2, 3 formula, and it worked.
Thinking back, and I know this is difficult because of your very storied career, what do you think was the crowning achievement of that career, sir?
I think my crowning achievement is watching my children grow. I lost my wife 4 years ago. We had 5 children, and I have 12 grandchildren, and I have 8 great-grandchildren today. Every one of them is successful. Every one of them is aggressive. And I think that's been my goal, is to make sure that they understand their role in this world. They understand it's up to them to be successful. It's not up to somebody else to make them successful. Mm-hmm. That I think is the most important thing to me in looking back.
Sir, that's a very beautiful sentiment. And I'm so sorry about the loss of your wife. But I have to, as a woman, I know that there is a partnership between a husband and a wife. and having raised that beautiful family that you've just outlined and shared with us, what was the thing that you and your beloved wife wanted to instill in your own children and your own grandchildren?
They can be and do anything they wanted in their lives,
It's beautiful.
period.
That is something that I think every parent and grandparent wants to instill. And the fact that you've achieved so much professionally, but personally, what you've accomplished is going to be that long-lasting legacy that you and I talked about a little earlier. Where do you see, if we get back to professionally really quickly, where do you see real estate work progressing in the future?
By training salespeople early in their career, when they first start, you can make them successful. But if you don't do that, they sit around and wait for business to come to them. In the real estate business, you have to go out and get it. And you have to train them how to do that because they represent sellers. And they're representing the most important thing the sellers have, and that's the equity in their home. So they have to be able to stand in front of a seller and say, I'm here to help you to sell your home and make it as easy as possible, the shortest period of time, the least inconvenience, and get you the best market price. And I think that's simply what has to be said. But it's education that makes the world change.
Absolutely. And continuing education, learning on a continuous basis really puts you ahead of the competition. You can never be stagnant in your education.
It makes you a good practitioner.
Yes, sir. And when preparation meets opportunity, that's what makes you successful.
Right.
So in conclusion, Mr. Yeager, what's the one thing you'd like the viewer of this video feature to walk away with?
I would like, I don't know, to tell you the truth. I was surprised when I was asked to do this. I'm not one that goes out and brags about what I've done. I'm not that kind of a guy, right? But I want others to see what can be done, what they can do, how successful anyone could be if they work at it, if they make it work for them.
Well, I don't doubt that you're not the braggart type of person, but one of the things that this series is designed to do is to highlight those within our communities and all industries that are making strides and setting examples. And Mr. Yeager, you certainly fit that bill. So thank you so very much for your candor, for your years of service to the community, for your example of success for generations to come. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Star.